She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip. This dame probably virtue signals on the toilet. But that's not the point here. While everybody else was trying to figure out how to survive as the government told us that breathing in public could kill us, Sunny was lolling around in her big house clicking on pictures of arugula while mixing Cocoa Puffs into her Haagen-Dazs. Oh, the oppression. I wonder if she wiped down the groceries herself or had her maid.
Everyone was too busy sipping the drama tea to notice what was really going down, except Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld. They didn't just call out Sunny Hostin's forced smile. They tore through the entire performance like a couple of comics ripping apart a bad open mic routine. Rogan came in swinging with facts sharper than a barber's fade, while Gutfeld lobbed punchlines like live grenades. Together, they didn't just clap back. They dismantled her polished persona so thoroughly the audience couldn't decide whether to laugh, gasp, or just sit there stunned in secondhand embarrassment.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
and at the same time, it seemed like the most interesting part was their audience seemed to be on my side.
1 minute Sunny Hostin was confidently tossing out hot takes on The View, and the next she looked like someone had yanked the teleprompter, lit it on fire, and tossed the ashes in the trash. What did Rogan and Gutfeld reveal? Let's just say Sunny's forecast went from artificial shine to a full-blown media thunderstorm. The thing is, it's almost impressive how she consistently lands on the most off-base opinion possible, like she's sprinting for gold in the wrong Olympics. Truly, if confidently missing the point where career path, she'd have a TED Talk, a leadership seminar, and a Forbes Women to Watch feature, for all the wrong reasons. But this time, she chose the absolute worst moment to go off the rails. In a world full of actual experts, experienced analysts, and people using logic, Sunny still manages to scream the loudest while saying the absolute least. That's talent misapplied.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
And that's when Rogan and Gutfeld stepped in, not with noise, but with precision. They didn't just roast Sunny Hostin. They incinerated the entire segment with a calm, calculated takedown. One glance at her highlight reel of unfiltered nonsense, and they knew the game was over. No more free passes. No more safe zones. Sunny had officially been dragged into the deep end. And this time, no one was tossing her a lifeline. Joe Rogan had sat across from everyone. Elite neuroscientists dropping pure science, conspiracy theorists swearing the earth is flat, and never once flinched. But Evie looked genuinely stunned, struggling to process how Sunny Hostin turned being confidently wrong into a full-time career. Was this satire? Did we miss the joke? Sunny has this uncanny habit of preaching like she's Moses fresh off the mountaintop. Except instead of commandments, she delivers hot takes carved in smugness and buzzwords. And Greg Gutfeld? He was practically vibrating with glee, cannonballing into her lava pit of contradictions like a man born for this exact moment. It's like Sunny lives in a warped dimension. Let's call it a Hostin time warp, where shouting over people counts as feminism and logic gets flagged as a microaggression. In this strange land, personal responsibility is somehow oppression, and serving smug nonsense with a straight face is considered a bold act of moral courage. Unfortunately for Sunny, the audience finally woke up, and the spotlight got a lot hotter.
Yeah, I saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days.
Yeah, is that annoying?
No.
No?
No, I mean, it's just, when I was on there, I really had no idea how it was going to land with the audience. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way.
Question Sunny Hostin for even a second and boom, you're instantly labeled a bigot, a sexist, or a proud member of some imaginary group called Big Hate. Every time she speaks, it's less of debate and more of a one-woman Broadway production titled Rage and Righteousness. At this point, it's not commentary, it's performance art. And Sunny? She's the lead actress, the director, and the only one clapping. Joe Rogan didn't even blink. He called it exactly what it is: weaponized narcissism dressed up as woke wisdom. Sunny's entire shtick is turning personal outrage into faux activism, and somehow she thought national television was a perfect stage to rebrand everyday working-class Americans as villains in some imaginary saga of oppression. Seriously, by her logic, grabbing dinner at Applebee's might as well be a hate crime. She once dismissed rural voters with so much smugness. You could practically hear her saying, "If you can't pronounce bourgeoisie with a French accent and a side of caviar, maybe your vote doesn't count." Rogan simply held up a mirror, and you could almost see Sunny recoil, like the reflection came with subpoenas.
Here's how she took the news. Roll it.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life.
But Greg Gutfeld? Oh, he didn't stop at a mirror. He showed up with a megaphone, a floodlight, and a sarcasm-powered wrecking ball. Watching him dismantle Sunny Hostin's takes was like peeling an onion made of recycled tweets, stale think pieces, and secondhand outrage. There was nothing underneath, just empty sound bites stuck on a loop of self-importance. Her political commentary has the depth of a toddler trying to explain taxes, loud wrong, and powered entirely by confusion. And the best part? Greg didn't even need to roast her. Sunny lit the match herself, soaked everything in delusion, and sprinted headfirst into a hurricane of facts. One of the most laugh-out-loud moments came when Sunny called her own co-host dangerous extremists for daring to suggest basic common sense. That's like calling a fire extinguisher a terrorist tool, because it interrupts your inferno of feelings. She claims to be a voice for the voiceless while hogging more airtime than anyone else on one of the most mainstream shows on television. A voice for the voiceless? Please. Sunny's not the voice. She's a noise.
I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
It's wild, isn't it? Sunny Hostin has a full-time contract to shout her takes on national TV 5 days a week, before most people even finish their first coffee, and yet she still plays the role of the silenced voice. Like, girl, how are you the underdog when you got more airtime than the Weather Channel during hurricane season? Joe Rogan didn't even need to raise his voice. He just hit her with that signature disappointed dad head shake, the one that silently says, asterisk, really? This again? Asterisk, it was peak slow burn Rogan. No theatrics, no shouting, just calm disbelief that someone living in a coastal mansion, hopping on private jets, can still cosplay as a victim of the system. If victimhood were a luxury brand, Sunny would be rocking the Platinum Tier badge, complete with exclusive Guilt Lounge access and a 24/7 outrage concierge. Greg Gutfeld, though, he didn't come to play. He came to dissect. What he delivered wasn't commentary. It was a surgical breakdown of Sunny's so-called logic, if you can even call it that. He came with receipts, dusted off her greatest contradictions like trophies, and put them on full display, especially that gem where she argued some opinions shouldn't be platformed, while saying on her own massive platform. That's not just hypocrisy, that's protesting junk food with fries in your mouth and a milkshake in hand.
The problem with that show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's a bizarre show.
Greg Gutfeld didn't hold back. He served Sunny Hostin the roast beef special, slow-cooked, smoky, and absolutely shredded. According to Sonny's internal GPS of logic, everything is toxic, everyone is dangerous, and what do you know? She's always the answer. Her worldview isn't so much thought leadership as it is an emotional roller coaster with no brakes. And somehow, the ride never ends. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Sonny once tried to cancel math, not an opinion, not a policy, actual basic math, because in her words, it doesn't account for lived experiences. No joke. Apparently, 2 + 2 needs to check its privilege now. When someone reminded Joe Rogan of that moment, he nearly choked from laughing. Then came the classic Rogan slow roast. No shouting, no theatrics, just lethal calm. He broke it down like asterisk. So if feelings are math now, I guess 2 + 2 equals my truth and gravity needs to issue a public apology. Asterisk, that kind of quiet sarcasm hits harder than 100 viral hot takes. Joe doesn't need volume. He just echoes Sonny's own words back to her, slowly, like he's tutoring a turtle in astrophysics. And somehow, that's more brutal than any scream fest. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld was sprinting laps around her logic, if you can call it that. Sonny has this uncanny superpower of turning any topic into an emotional pretzel of contradictions. Mention school lunches? Boom, systemic oppression. Say gas prices? Suddenly, it's white supremacy's fault. As Gutfeld put it, watching Sonny talk is like watching someone try to defuse a bomb with a blender. Loud, chaotic, and everyone ends up crying anyway.
But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim. If you want a show where people know the host is stupider than you, then set your DVR to watch Sunny Hostin on The View.
Nicely done, Gene.
And then there's the infamous Sonny Hostin humblebrag, lecturing Americans on inequality while casually name-dropping her Ivy League degree and flexing about her Hamptons vacation home. 1 minute she's preaching about struggle, and the next she's sipping an oat milk latte. Live tweeting the revolution from a yacht. Greg Gutfeld didn't just call it out. He turned it into a full-blown one-man Broadway show, Oppression, the musical, sponsored by luxury real estate and organic foam milk. He didn't just roast her, he gave it a title, The Privileged Prophet, A Sunny Tale. And honestly, that's exactly what it felt like. A sermon delivered from atop a diamond-encrusted soapbox, claiming moral authority in a panel that includes Joy Behar. That's like being named MVP at a demolition derby just because you showed up sober. Joe Rogan took it even further. He said she talks like a fortune cookie rewritten by Tumblr, vague, self-important, and violently allergic to nuance. And he wasn't wrong. Every take Sonny drops feels like it came from a journal titled Deep Thoughts by someone who only read the headline. But Greg wasn't done. Not even close. He dragged out the biggest irony of all. Sonny Hostin preaching about misinformation while being a non-stop generator of it. She's the type to read one headline, misquote it instantly, and spend the entire week yelling it like scripture while accusing you of being uninformed. Greg compared it to showing up at a symphony with a kazoo and demanding the first-chair violin solo, then acting like you're the star of the show.
It's a very strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, it's interesting because I think Sunny is very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
That's sort of, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, who are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course. They do everything with an agenda.
Yeah.
Then came that moment. When Sonny pulled a classic, You Can't Understand a Black Experience, card on anyone who disagreed with her, as if that instantly made her immune to facts, context, or basic accountability. Rogan, who's interviewed more respected black intellectuals than Sonny's, probably name-dropped at brunch. Didn't even argue. He just blinked. Because that level of moral high ground was so high, NASA could probably flag it as space debris. Greg nailed it with one line. Asterisk, Sonny doesn't want equality. She wants immunity. Asterisk immunity from criticism, pushback, debate, and facts. She wants to play a rigged game where she writes the rules, rewrites them mid-game, and then screams asterisk racist, asterisk the second anyone calls her out. At this point, a conversation with Sunny isn't a debate. It's a courtroom drama where she's a judge, the jury, and the only one allowed to speak. And somehow, she still walks away thinking she's a victim. Joe Rogan summed it up best. Asterisk, debating Sunny Hostin is like trying to teach a cat to juggle. Asterisk, it's chaotic, it's pointless, and you're guaranteed to walk away scratched, exhausted, and deeply confused. And somehow, that's still not the worst part.
Oh, I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Exactly, because if she is shaming descendants of this, will she continue to do that when she is now one of them? And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
The moment anyone dares to disagree, Sunny doesn't just push back. She rolls out the full emotional red carpet. Suddenly, she's a victim of a national crisis, unveiling her pain like she's accepting an Oscar for most offended person alive. Every debate turns into an attack. Every question becomes violence, and sarcasm? That's basically a hate crime in her universe. Greg Gutfeld went nuclear on this one. He said Sunny is basically a human fire alarm that only goes off when logic enters a room. The second someone drops a fact, you can practically hear her internal sirens wailing. Rogan, cool as ever, didn't even flinch. He just pointed out that if Sunny ran the world, podcasts would be outlawed, books would come with trigger warnings and emotional footnotes, and family dinners would require both a therapist and a legal mediator. Because in Sunny's worldview, intellectual diversity is dangerous. But echo chambers? That's self-care. And it doesn't stop at politics. Sunny's got takes on science too. Spicy ones. She once suggested that biology should be re-examined because it fails to consider the emotional impact of facts. Yes, really. Gutfeld nearly fell out of his chair, calling it the academic equivalent of eating crayons and blaming the waiter.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses, regardless of skin color. People marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
Sunny Hostin treats hard science like it's a Netflix script rewrite. Ask her for a source, and you won't get a citation. You'll get accused of tone policing while she tortures your argument and then plays a victim in the ashes. Greg Gutfeld had the final word on that one. He said Sunny's next book should be titled Gaslight, the memoir, complete with forward written in all caps and a mood ring bookmark. Joe Rogan didn't come in with fireworks, just one brutal truth. Sunny Hostin isn't engaging in conversations. She's conducting ideological hostage negotiations. Disagree with her? You're evil. Ask a question? You're canceled. Make a joke? Suddenly you're a threat to democracy. It's a vibe so sterile. Even bacteria would file an HR complaint for emotional damage. Sunny's legacy on TV won't be remembered for insight or courage. It'll be remembered for the accidental comedy gold she delivered while trying to sound like a philosopher. Every rant, a meme. Every lecture, an unintentional stand-up set. Rogan and Gutfeld didn't need to get nasty. They just held up a mirror. And what did it reflect? Not a fearless truth teller. Not a social justice warrior. Just someone cloaked in righteous indignation, praying no one noticed the hypocrisy slipping beneath the seams. This wasn't a takedown. It was a worldview audit. Rogan and Gutfeld exposed the bounce checks of logic, revoked her emotional credit card, and repossessed the fake moral high ground she'd been flexing for years. And they did it while laughing. Because when absurdity gets this thick, the only option is mockery until it collapses under its own nonsense. Let's tally it up. 2 podcast mics, 1 Fox News mug, 0 rebuttals, and 1 sunny disposition turn into a full-blown eclipse. Now, people can't help but ask, when a performance ends and the applause dies down, is there anything real behind persona? She always pulls the same move. First, complain about your tone, then immediately follow it up with the emotional equivalent of a sledgehammer wrapped in smugness. Gutfeld nailed it when he said Sunny's the only person who can make sunshine feel aggressive, like being hit with a compliment that somehow leaves a bruise. That fake warmth? It's not empathy. It's a spotlight she uses to blind the audience while she rewrites reality in real time. But here's the real twist. Their takedown wasn't personal. It was surgical. Rogan and Gutfeld didn't come for a character. They dismantled the ideological scaffolding she stands on, brick by buzzword. And let's be honest, when your entire platform is built on outrage, contradictions, and recycled Twitter discourse, it doesn't take much more than a breeze of logic to bring a whole house down. Sunny's arguments don't collapse under heat. They evaporate the second they meet scrutiny. She's built a career on being untouchable, unreachable, and unquestionable. But all it took was two guys with microphones, a camera, and a sense of humor to poke holes in the entire operation. They didn't use venom. They used something far more dangerous in Sunny's world. Clarity. And in an echo chamber that thrives on chaos. Clarity might just be the deadliest weapon of all. If that breakdown hit harder than Sunny's latest think piece, smash that like button, drop your take in the comments, and subscribe for more truth with zero filters. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.